Well, a two-day summit on gender-based violence and femicide is set to start in Centurion, south of Pretoria tomorrow. The summit, which will be hosted by the government, is aimed at finding lasting solutions to the scourge of gender-based violence. It comes after hundreds of women marched to the union buildings in August to hand a memorandum to President Cyril Ramaphosa. And for more on the summit, we're now joined in studio by Lulama Nare, who's the chairperson for the Commission for Gender Equality. Thanks very much for joining us. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting us.
All right, so what are you hoping will come out of this summit? Because, you know, I get the feeling, and I'm quite sad actually, that we often talk about these things a lot, but see very little change, and one's hoping that something different is going to happen this time.
I think what will be different about this summit is that South Africa is actually reviewing a lot of what it has in terms of combating and addressing issues of gender violence. We're looking at institutions, we're looking at the judiciary, we're looking at the NPA, the prosecutions, we're looking at really patriarchy and its stronghold on our communities, and the whole issue that the male-centered views are prevailing, and those male-centered views are actually not in sync with the Constitution, because our Constitution, the founding principles of our Constitution and our democracy is on non-sexism, and actually women have a right to their bodies, freedom of security, and the state has an obligation to protect women. And I think the President has actually committed himself back in August to actually allow us to address this issue. And I think that at that day he also had an impassioned plea on men actually to review how we look at men, at women, and how we actually act against women. And I think for me, we need to also talk about the Constitution, because I think that our communities and how we view women, what we say women must wear, is actually South Africa doesn't have a uniform way of women. How should women dress in South Africa? We are not a religious country. We are free to wear what we need to wear. But what we have found with our communities, if we wear short things, it seems as if we're calling for rape. If we are lesbian, it seems as if we need to be corrected to be made women. And rape is happening in our private residences at home. It also happens openly on our streets as women are going to the park with their children, going to work on taxis. And therefore, it has just grown, and our girls are also at the brunt of rape inside their homes and also in the public spaces.
All right, so, you know, I think there are a lot of things that can be fixed for sure. Things like how policemen treat victims when they arrive at police stations, the court systems, speeding up justice, and also this second victimization in the way that they're cross-examined. Those things I think can be, but how do we change society attitudes that men have, especially these long-standing patriarchal attitudes?
We just have to address it. We need to call it out. And for all our men to understand that our socialization, especially the one that gives men an advantage over women, allows men to fold their hands, for them to be cooked and everything to be served with them, reading newspapers, that time is up. Also, with the growth of single-headed households, single women-headed households, it means that women themselves are providing security for their children. They are going out there to be breadwinners in their homes, and therefore things have actually shifted a lot since we have been treating or telling women that they are subject to men. And the Constitution actually doesn't say so. Constitution believes in equality. Constitution believes that we should address issues of sexism and its harmful practices. But I find it interesting because even in cross-examination, you still find the framing of the cross-examination based on the society and what society is saying about women. And it's something that I think in this gender summit, it would be addressed. Lastly, the other thing that will be happening in the gender summit is finally to bring to bear what I think Honorable Minister Nkosazana raised as part of her department on monitoring, that we actually need to measure what we are doing in this country. How much budget are we putting in combating gender violence? But also, how much are we funding shelters? How are we going to do the specialized courts? What is the state's thinking and funding on women-directed programs, and what actually the government is doing? We need to measure that, and gender disaggregated data needs to come in. And I think formally in the Gender Summit we would be talking about the indicators and how soon the state can actually have this comprehensive information. And also, one of the things that we need as the country is actually gender violence strategy, because we don't have a strategy. We only have different activities that are happening here and there, and also bringing in the civil society together, because what we have seen as the Gender Commission also is that the communities are very much involved in addressing police and in what they should be doing more for girls, missing girls, and women who are raped, women who have been violated. So,
we've run out of time, but I think I do have to ask this question, because nobody gets abused and nobody knows about it. Either someone in the family knows, next door neighbors know what's going on. How do we stop this culture of silence? We know it's going on. Our friend is beating up his girlfriend, whatever. We just don't seem to want to step forward and say, stop what you're doing.
I think that we should step forward. Even the religious groupings now, they know that when a person says to you, I have been raped, if it's a child, you have an obligation to report. So we can't keep silent anymore. Do something, do it anonymously if you can, report to the Gender Commission, report police that are not taking the case seriously, report the courts that are not sitting and delaying and doing all their workload and everything. The communities need to take action, and less complaining but action. We need to report the different things that are happening to us, and they need to be addressed.
All right. We wish you the very best of luck with this summit, and we'll be very much involved in telling the stories that are coming out of there, and let's hope that this acts as a catalyst for real change in our country. Thanks so much indeed for coming through.
Thank you for inviting us.